As we look at the selling of attention deficit disorder, I want to play for you a TV ad featuring music, celebrity, and singer Adam Levine, produced by Everyday Health Media.
I couldn't organize my thoughts. It was my ADHD, and like many kids with ADHD, I didn't outgrow it. I remember very distinctly not being able to focus. So that was right around the time when I actually saw a doctor.
If you were diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, you might still have it. Take a quiz at ownYourADHD.com to recognize your symptoms. Then talk with your doctor.
Looking into it is really important. It's your ADHD. Own it.
Everyday Health Media produced that. That's Adam Levine who's speaking. Alan Schwarz, you wrote a series of pieces in the New York Times. What about this?
Well, hey, it's fair enough. If you had ADHD as a child, you might still have it. About 50% of adults will retain their symptoms and perhaps even impairment as adults. So it's a fair message. But if you take the quiz at ownYourADHD.com and you look up in the top right-hand corner, it's sponsored by Shire, the maker of Intuitive, Vyvanse, and in the past, Adderall XR. Now, if you take the quiz, we gave the quiz to 1,100 Americans, scientifically, over the phone. It was legitimate. 48% of them took this 6-question quiz and were told through the algorithm that ADHD was either possible or possibly likely, which is a curious diagnosis. Anyway, the test is rigged to get people to think they have the disorder, and that's very powerful.
I mean, I've got it right here in your piece in the New York Times. You lay out the 6 questions, and how often do you have trouble wrapping up the final details of a project once the challenging parts have been done? How often do you have difficulty getting things in order when you have to do a task that requires organization? How often do you have problems remembering appointments or obligations? When you have a task that requires a lot of thought, how often do you avoid or delay getting started? How often do you fidget or squirm with your hands or feet when you sit down for a long time? And how often do you feel overly active and compelled to do things like you were driven by a motor?
But again, I don't blame the test for human beings' misuse of it. It is our fault. What they don't say in there is that these symptoms are supposed to be severe, and they're supposed to impair your daily life and functioning. And if they meet that standard, then you really do have ADHD.
We have very little time. Jamison Monroe, who is coming to you at your clinic? You who are a recovering, as you describe it, Adderall addict, the Newport Academy Rehabilitation Center.
So one thing that I want to highlight real quick is in one of Alan's previous pieces, he had a great quote from a pediatrician, and this is something that I love that Dr. Maté addresses as well. And a pediatrician quote said, "I don't have a whole lot of choice. We've decided as a society that it's too expensive to modify the kid's environment, the school environment, parenting, so we have to modify the kid." So, you know, like we're saying here, we've kind of been pushed into a corner. We need to develop, you know, parenting skills. We need to expand the school offerings, creative arts, creative outlets, things like that. So what we see at Newport Academy, and in the filming of Behind the Orange Curtain, which highlights mainly prescription drug overdoses, primarily opiates, is that all of those kids, not all, but almost all of the kids that are highlighted in the documentary, and many of the kids we see coming into Newport Academy, the first drug they took was an ADHD stimulant medication. We see about 60% of kids that come through Newport Academy are on one, mostly multiple medications. As Dr. Maté was alluding to, is that they'll be put on an Adderall, and then they'll be put on an antidepressant, and then it just compounds each other. And so we see about 2/3 of our kids that come to Newport Academy are on pharmaceutical medications for one diagnosis or another, and about half of those have some sort of Adderall diagnosis, whether it's legitimate or not. What we do is we'll typically take kids off of these medications because there is no baseline and there is no real test that has been done to give a proper diagnosis. And then we'll be able to have a baseline to see if we need, these kids do in fact need medications. And only about 30% of kids leave Newport Academy on medications.
We only have 10 seconds, but I want to go back to John Edwards. You're suing Harvard University. What do you want to see happen?
Well, for me, and particularly to the questions being asked today, I want to get the answer to the question if, you know, I agree with what Alan said exactly. At one level, these medications do have a purpose, but they're to address serious issues. And one of the questions I have related to Johnny that I've not had answered is how do you have a 4.0, or they're very close to that, at Harvard, and be considered to have something like attention deficit disorder? I would think that's all you need to know, and you don't need to be hunting for
John Edwards,
like,
we have to leave it there, and I want to thank Gabor Maté and Alan Schwarz, as well as Jamison Monroe. That does it for the broadcast. We'll continue this. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily, independent, global grassroots news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org today. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.